Good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, dear friends, on behalf of the COP28 incoming presidency, I would like to extend my gratitude for having me here today to discuss a very important aspect in the context of ambition and implementation. Today, we stand at a pivotal juncture in the timeline of our planet. This is not just another decade, but a critical period for a decisive climate action. The most recent IPCC report have already made it crystal clear that we are way off track. It laid out a stark reality. Global temperatures have already risen by 1.1 degrees C, and each incremental of warming will only intensify the negative impacts and related losses and damages. Many countries have already stepped up their ambition and submitted a new NDC, heeding the call for a strengthened NDC in the Glasgow Climate Pact and the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan. Yet, still, the current projections indicate that warming will exceed 1.5 degrees unless more ambitious mitigation measures are implemented effectively and immediately. Moreover, the latest NDC synthesis report shows that current commitments will only achieve a 0.3% reduction below 2019 levels by 2030, which is far from what the IPCC models deem necessary. Colleagues, the science is clear. This is a critical decade of action to align mitigation efforts with the Paris consistent pathways and deliver on the 43% reductions that we must achieve by 2030 to avoid the most diverse impact of climate change. Speaking of implementation, in order to accelerate the transition at the scale and the speed required to meet these goals, we must foster innovative and efficient approaches to build and implement ambitious NDCs and long-term low emission development strategies, in line, of course, with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. This requires not only aligning targets with the correct pathways, but also setting the right policy frameworks and enabling conditions, as well as sustainable institutional arrangements, so that implementation is possible as well as effective. To this end, NDCs have to be bridged into the relevant policies, measures, and investment frameworks. Nonetheless, we cannot deny the fact that implementation of NDCs, especially with regards to energy transition and industry decarbonization, often encounters barriers and challenges, particularly in the absence of means of implementation. In the context of the MENA region, despite the challenges of implementation, the region holds significant potential for global and regional energy transition, already evidenced by advanced and ambitious energy investment and diversification plans, fostering cooperation across the region and elsewhere. Furthermore, economic diversification plays an important role in ensuring that the MENA region can contribute to the global efforts to tackle climate crisis, including through the scaling of alternative energy sources as well as technological solutions. It is also imperative to emphasize that beyond mainstreaming the transition of the energy sector across the economy, it is critical due to the region's unique challenges that this is undertaken from a lens of enhanced resilience to ensure harnessing the opportunities in the transition and minimizing its social and economic impacts. Today's agenda brings together countries and development partners to develop collaborative strategies that support the energy transition in the MENA region, and it offers a critical platform for advancing national and regional efforts to implement a just and effective energy transition, while supporting, of course, sustainable and inclusive growth. Outcomes of this session will support positive outcomes for COP28, particularly for the energy piece. A just, pragmatic, reasonable, and responsible energy transition is clearly positioned to be at the heart of the mitigation outcome at COP28. And the MENA's region lessons learned, best practices, and experiences are unique windows into the opportunities that this process can bring at the global level to bring together climate objectives with the broader development objectives. Colleagues and friends, let's utilize today's platform to its fullest potential. Let us continue this discussion with a sense of urgency, passion, and commitment that our planet definitely deserves. Let us deepen our understanding, strengthen our resolve, and broaden our cooperation, and make sure that we leave no stone unturned, no question unanswered, and no solution unexplored. We are at a halfway point, 7 years since the Paris Agreement, with 7 years to go to 2030. This is our moment to act, to change the course of our planet's future. Let us harness this opportunity to create a safer and more resilient world for our future generations. Thank you for having me here, and I look forward to the fruitful discussion and welcoming you all very soon after 51 days at COP28.
Thank you very much, Iman. Now, I am pleased to welcome two presenters who will provide the big picture of energy transitions in MENA NDCs. Simon Ben Maras, IRENA Team Lead of Renewable Energy Technology and Infrastructure, please.
Thank you, organizers. On behalf of the Director General Francisco La Camera of the International Renewable Energy Agency, I'd like to extend sincere thanks for hosting us today in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, along of the organizers of MENA Climate Week. Ladies and gentlemen, today we face a sobering reality. I'd like to give a few insights regarding the progress in the MENA region related to the so-called NDCs and the National Climate Action Plan. Current climate pledges, as you know, will not be enough to meet the Paris target by mid-century. As of COP27, and we hope many good news in next month in Dubai, we face around a 60 gigaton emission gap by 2050. This is more than just a number. It's a wake-up call. The MENA region, endowed with the abundant resource and talents, play and will play an important role. The goal will be to turn pledges into action in order to close the emission gap. It is critical to understand the relationship between the nationally determined contribution and the long-term low-emission development strategy, the LTLEDs, when discussing the Paris Agreement. Every 5 years, NDCs serve as a short-term compass, guiding countries in their immediate climate action. LTLEDs, on the other hand, are long-term maps that provide a holistic framework for achieving low-carbon resilience society by mid-century. When these come together, the real magic happens. Aligning NDCs and LTLEDs can act as a multiplier in the MENA region, where we have both burgeoning renewable resources, functioning markets, and as well extreme vulnerability to climate change. Climate change is not a distant threat in the MENA region. It is a pressing issue with far-reaching consequences. Due to the vulnerable states to climate impacts such as extreme heat, desertification, and water scarcity, immediate action is not today the only option. It is a requirement. Given the geographical condition, it can provide unparalleled opportunity in solar and wind energy. And for that, the significance of NDCs in the region cannot be overstated. They are more than just a compliant mechanism. They are a roadmap that can be taken advantage to local conditions to achieve both mitigation and adaptation goals. Transitioning to solar energy, for example, can not only reduce emissions, but also free up water resources that will otherwise go into the traditional energy infrastructure. And these water resources are critical for water-stressed areas. With rigorous data at our disposal, the story is clear. The 2020s are the pivotal decade for climate action. Annual emissions are projected to fall to 34 gigatons by 2050 under IRENA Plan Energy scenario, which is the business as usual scenario, compared to the 1.5 degree, which aim to reach zero emission targets by 2050. Mathematically, achieving net zero emission requires steep emission reduction that is heavily weighted toward 2030. This decade will be guided through, by rigorous data monitoring, radical collaboration among countries, and commitments to large-scale immediate changes that realign our carbon budgets. It is required by the data, and future generation relies on it. The MENA region, as you know, is at the crossroad in terms of its energy and economic future. With a long and rich history and expertise in fossil fuel sectors, the region is uniquely positioned to shift away from traditional energy sources to be a global leader in the energy transition, leveraging the fossil fuel legacy to pave the way for a more sustainable and economically resilient future. The MENA region is seeing, according to our analysis, an increase in the setting of renewable targets, which are encouraging but still far from sufficient. While the world has ambitious plans for renewable capacity, the focus remains remarkably narrow, both in terms of geography and technologies. Despite its significant solar and wind potential, the MENA region only accounts for around 3% of all targets globally. Furthermore, technological concentration is limiting. The majority of the global capacity by 2030 is aimed at solar PV and offshore wind, owing to their declining costs. Recent updates to the Middle East and North Africa NDCs show increased mitigation ambition, but still fall short of what is needed to achieve net zero emission by mid-century. Under a BAU scenario, GHG emission in the MENA region will actually triple by 2060 compared to the baseline of 2000, exacerbating the region's already severe, vulnerable state to climate impacts. Mitigation strategies have enormous untapped potential, ranging from large-scale renewable projects to localized climate-resilient urban planning. By doing so, the MENA countries can not only help to reduce global GHG emissions, but also correct
Alors, les pays de moyenne,
carbon to income growth trajectory.
et pour ça, il faut mettre liste de carbone. On a de nouvelles pour l'énergie. Et cette chance est très bien dans ce moment. Et pour être plus clair, ce plan pour le futur et alors et on va chercher aussi pour 1,7 trillion dollars pour les sources qui sont là. Et tous les produits de carbone. Alors, il y a des points qu'il faut regarder maintenant. Et pour toutes les publicités et tous les carbons au l'air, il faut que le power de l'énergie qu'ils sont besoin d'expérimenter qu'ils sont très importants pour le sujet. Et on voit aussi, comme on a dit, dans le Moyen-Orient, il fait bien être plus de solutions pour avoir ce qu'on a besoin. Et ces travaux besoin que tous ensemble ont la même histoire et pour tout et merci pour tous pour bien entendu. Merci beaucoup à Monsieur Simon. Et maintenant, on va discuter avec Madame Dalia, le présentateur des États-Unis. Bonjour, je suis le président de Énergie au East Asia. Et alors, je pense qu'on va parler avec vous au Moyen-Orient ou les Africains pays, les pays de Afrique. Et ce que je veux dire, c'est compléter de ce que mon collègue a déjà dit. Et maintenant, 2030, il y a des choses qu'on voulait bien avoir.
It represents more than a third of the oil reserves as proven reserves, as we know today, and 15%
Et ça, c'est
of
le
gas reserves, which builds on the economic
point
development
3
and would remain
de
40%
l'utilisation
But
globale.
at the same time, if we take it also from the CO2 emission, and if we take it,
Mais
although
aussi,
problematic when we look at to the metric ton per capita, then basically we see that
le carbone
the region
estimé
and certain
au
countries in the
global,
region, specifically oil and gas producing countries, still have a high carbon footprint because
on
of
a
the oil
bien
and gas
voir
business,
qu'il y a
as you
des
can see
pays
it in this slide. But at the same time, there is a huge willingness and
qui
commitment from countries in the
ont
region
beaucoup de
really not
carbone
only to drive the sustainable development
en
agenda,
l'air
but also to address climate change.
et
Not
ils
only
font le
nationally,
faire
but also
plus de
regionally and
solutions
globally. And this platform, maybe there were several events that spoke about the net zero, the role of fossil
pour
fuels.
mettre
We see
moins
several
de
countries in the
carbone
region announcing the net zero in the
en
horizon
l'air.
2050 and 2060. The host country,
On
Kingdom
voit
Saudi
cet
Arabia,
article
realistically putting the target 2060, and we see already the progress, but also
et
United
comme
Arab
on a vu
Emirates and
en Arabie
then
Saoudite,
let's just look at where we stand. Since the
on
MENA region
espère
is
que
not just looking to the oil and
au,
gas producing
au
countries, but also from a
2060,
regional perspective. What we translate in the NDCs actually it's towards an instrument to, let's say, a
on va
platform
voir
that helps
c'est ce que
to
soit,
unlock financial resources, access to
c'est quoi
technology,
le
capacity building
LDC
in order to achieve the SDG 7 and SDG 13, but also enable all the SDGs. The
et
region
ça
still,
seulement pour
although
avoir
have a blind
plus
spot when factoring in the
d'informations.
access above 90% of the access to electricity in
Et
the
quand on
region,
parle
but
avec
we still have more than 52 million people, 42
le
million people who do
transport
not have access to electricity.
et
And
importé,
as presented in this chart, we see that we still
il y a
have an
plus
urban
que
rural divide.
50 millions
83%
de
of people
personnes
in the rural
qui n'ont
population don't
pas
have access to electricity,
d'électricité
and most of
in the Arab
let's say
region,
the issues of access are located in the
comme on
LDCs
voit
or
ici.
countries in conflicts within the region. At the same time,
Et on
we
espère
cannot speak about
qu'après,
access to electricity
ils vont
without
avoir de
connectivity, and
l'électricité.
these two extremely interlinked. We have seen certain initiatives announced yesterday
On va
by the Kingdom
discuter
Saudi Arabia in the how to support the
comment
African
les
continent in addressing this access gap, but also in certain Arab
énergies
countries. And we see
besoin
that
pour cette personne
as of the target
qu'ils ont
20
plus
technologies
que
will grow
50
above the
millions.
global average, but we still have a rural-urban divide. More than
Et
21%
pour le
of the region
nettoyage
do not have access to
ou
clean
son
energy technologies,
maison
but
ou
most of
bien
them are located
au
in rural
travail.
areas and countries in conflict.
Et maintenant, je pense que mon collègue a commencé à dire la même chose. Et comme on discute par rapport à ce sujet,
present good, I would say, progress in terms of achieving renewable energy, as we take it as an indicator, as the share of
on n'a
final
pas
energy
beaucoup
consumption
d'avancées
at
ou bien de
4.6%
succès
regionally,
dans ce sujet
and
jusqu'à
still
maintenant.
more than 80% relying on traditional
Et
biofuels
alors,
because traditional biomass because it's still in most of the
il y
countries
a
in the NDCs, most of them in
80%
countries like Sudan,
qu'ils ont
Mauritania, but
toujours
also
utilisé
in countries like Yemen. At the
le
same time,
pétrole
the bright spot of
comme
this
le
that,
Soudan
and I think,
ou le Yémen,
as you know,
qu'ils
that the
sont
region is
toujours
leading in terms of the lowest
utilisé le
cost
même.
for renewable energy. And all the forecasts presented also by IRENA that we will see the major
Ou bien
capacity coming from the region, and by
l'énergie
2030, and even
renouvelable,
before that, we will see
elles
that
sont
the
moins
more than
expensives
20% of the global capacities will come as
et
a
juste
percentage of increase in the capacity that we have today
20%,
will come from the region in terms of investment in
20% de
renewable energy,
l'énergie que
with the larger project in terms of
nous
solar, but
allons
also in terms of wind, but also will lead also to hydrogen project in a near future. Now, the other aspect that maybe I wanted to also to highlight since in the
et
NDCs,
aussi
there's
ce
less
que je
of
voulais
indication in terms of what's the
discuter
target to
aujourd'hui.
achieve and what's the,
Il
I
n'y a
would say,
pas,
the instrument, or let's say the enablers, the investment
il
that
n'y
we
a
need to
pas
make to
de
do cross-sector
sujet,
in order to improve
il n'y a pas
the
de
energy demand, and more
matériel
importantly, energy
que
efficiency,
nous allons
if we take
besoin
the indicator as
pour
an energy intensity. Unfortunately, from a regional perspective,
continuer
the region still lacks the
l'énergie
highest also
et
in the energy
fact.
intensity. It's the highest
Et ça, c'est
compared to baseline
facilité.
compared to other regions. And this is due to the business model that we have in terms of subsidized prices in electricity sector, but also that impact the
Et
building
maintenant,
sector, transport sector, the industrial sector, which is highly energy intensive. But
on
at the
voit,
same time, the business model that due to the
on
subsidies
voit
in
bien
electricity,
ici
but
au
also
sujet le
lenders,
différent
our energy system is not
arabe
efficient because
sujet
of
aux régions
proximity
de
access as a high
énergie.
priority, but this led that we are,
Euh,
our business model
C'est qui les
is not
personnes
as
qui
much energy,
peuvent
I would say,
payer pour
efficient. But at the
l'énergie
same time,
et
countries like the region,
l'électricité.
like the North Africa, like Morocco, for
On
example,
va voir
Egypt and
ici, pour
Jordan,
exemple,
some of the countries really are leading
pour
in terms
exemple,
of
en
improving
Jordan,
energy efficiency for the simple reason
ne paye
that
pas
electricity prices, in
d'énergie
addition to all
suffisante.
the energy efficiency measures they did in the building sector, but
Comme on
also
va
in
voir, le
the
Jordan,
other
elles sont
oil and gas producers. So this helped also to
beaucoup
look at the
comme
energy
au Maroc
intensity from
aussi.
much more domestic and also transport. We see they are much more efficient because
Et,
also the electricity
et
prices
pour
in
ce
certain
sujet,
cases
le
above
plus
the
important
European
qu'on
average,
voit,
like countries in Jordan, for example, and Morocco. And with that, that we see that the
comme
much more investments need
on
to
voit
be
le
made in
prix
this
de
respect, and
l'électricité
this need to
au
be much more
Jordan,
reflected in the NDCs in terms
hein,
of need for
au Maroc,
finance.
c'est le plus
Just to
expensive.
reflect that the NDCs, although not all of them were properly
Ici, on va
written,
parler avec
quantified when it
pour les
came to the
NDCs.
first and across the different years, although the different updates presented by certain countries, but we see
C'est
already
ça
that
le global.
most, if not all the countries, have very ambitious target when it comes
C'est
to
la
renewable energy.
majorité de
And
pays.
we see already the progress
Ils ont
that
de
they have made,
différents
be it
plans
oil and gas producers or consumers alike.
pour
But when it comes to
l'utilisation
what we
de
see as a
renouvelables
key
énergie.
energy source that will be really a major, I would
Mais les
say,
sources
really a
d'énergie,
game changer in the region
c'est
is
plusieurs de
hydrogen.
sources
Be it green, blue,
d'énergie,
independently of the colors that we speak about,
mais le
but still
plus
clean hydrogen, as we defined, is a huge potential in the region. And
matériel pour
in
les
the
sources
NDCs, still none of the
d'énergie,
countries
c'est le
really
hydrogène,
reflected really that in their NDCs, because you cannot put that as a target when
mais
you
c'est
don't have the
aussi,
enablers, and you would be also in a way in a
il fait
situation
aussi
to also
de
report on that.
pollution.
The other picture of the NDCs, and this is what I really like this slide because
C'est
it
l'autre
shows
plan
that how we
et l'autre sujet
NDCs
pour les
evolve in
NDC.
the Arab countries and how we
On
really,
va voir
while
ici les
understanding
NDCs.
the commitment that we need to make from the climate change, but also our role to address the
C'est
CO2
qui les
emissions,
NDCs qui
specifically from
affectent
oil
le
and gas
climat.
producers. we see that all of them
On
not
va
only
essayer
put a target in terms of CO2,
c'est
reducing the CO2
tout
emission. Some of
le
them, if not
produire
all,
de
put a
gaz.
target also in terms of the CCS as really a key
Ils vont
instrument for
bien
carbon removal, and
produire
also set targets for the net
le
zero at
gaz.
2060 and
Et elles sont
2050.
bien
But in
travaillées
the
de
NDCs, obviously the targets were more on
moins de
looking at carbon
carbone,
removal and greenhouse
mais
gas emissions, so
tout
that
ça,
it was quantified.
le,
But at the
le
same
plan
time, look at how the
juste
targets that we put in place in terms of
2060,
economic diversification and how
il
we
est plusieurs de
move in somehow
compagnies
from oil and gas
à
as a major
2050.
source of revenues. Now, maybe because when we speak about the NDCs and because we need to report also if we use global stock take as a
Et
platform,
voit aussi le hors
we should
région
keep in mind that one of the major constraints
qu'ils n'ont
that
pas
we face
plus
in
de
the region,
température,
and specifically in certain countries in the region when it comes to put their NDCs, because
mais
there
le
is there's
projet,
an issue of the
il est
vulnerability
bien
aspect
increasé.
at the outset. It's a region, as I presented this slide, just to inform that we do in the region Commission Western Asia
Et ça,
modeling of
c'est ce que
vulnerability
j'ai dit
assessment from climate change perspective, vulnerability assessment
avec
also
le
looking what are the resources,
agent
but
de
also and rise of temperature.
Ouest de
This
l'Asie,
what we did this summer. We found out that when globally we
mais
have we
aussi
speak
les
about
problèmes
increase of
de
temperature
réchauffement
1.18, in the region
climatique,
it's 1.82 degrees Celsius, which is the
1.8.
highest obviously globally, and it's evolving in the coming decades or centuries. So it shows that the vulnerability aspect should be and need to be as the outset is the enablers, or let's say not the enablers, but let's say the motivation in a way that what we need to put at the outset in our NDCs in order be it from the
Et,
from the perspective of oil and gas producers, or let's say rich and least developed countries, we all have the same vulnerability when it comes to the climate change.
et
We
tous
do
les
share
pays qui
similar
sont là-bas,
vulnerabilities that we
ils ont
always
la
try
même.
to communicate from a regional perspective. That what's reflecting the NDCs and what we try to sometimes not quantified because it's really difficult to
Et pour
quantify
ça,
adaptation and mitigation together in a region which is extremely
c'est
vulnerable
difficile
from
de
water scarcity. You have 13
être
countries in the
sûr
region. Globally, the most scarce countries globally, starting by Bahrain, finishing by Tunisia. We have also, as I indicated, increased hail,
et on a
land
aussi
degradation, desertification, food insecurity, but at the same time, we have issues in terms
oui,
of long-term damage
problème au
to
moyen.
the ecosystem, and because we do have, we live in an area very vulnerable, but at the same
Oui.
time, other
L'environnement,
aspects that we
c'est
find
trop
them in the region, I think we witness several,
instable.
natural weather conditions that we had and that changes, be it in North
Cette
Africa, the Pacific, but also
moyenne
in
région,
the DCC, which you cannot necessarily focus and plan for
par
it.
exemple le
At the same
nord
time, we do have
africain,
social inequality in the region, and we have countries who still do not have access to health, education, and so we cannot put all of that in a regional perspective, saying how the MENA region
il
would
n'y a
cope
pas
with the
d'assurance de
delivering of the
santé.
NDCs when it's a region which is
Et pour ça, c'est un
so
peu
that's why,
difficile de
let me just to put, when you speak about the NDCs, the challenge of quantifying the
travailler
needs
avec le
of
nord
this
de
population.
Afrique et
I
quelques
certainly
pays
indicated that
qui n'ont pas
sustainable development goals and how energy enables the social economic development of the
d'assurance.
countries in the region is our priority. Why climate obviously is part of this equation, but at the same time in the NDCs, there were commitments to really unlock finance.
Et ça pour l'économie,
So just this is the work that we try to do with partner organizations to look at how
et ce
the
travail
countries in the
qu'on a
region
travaillé
were
avec
able, some of them, to
mes autres
quantify in
collègues,
their NDCs the need for finance. But when we look at the global perspective, we speak about $570 billion as total finance
il y a
required
plus de
for NDC implementation that was quantified
570
just in
billions
11 Arab countries.
pour
Others, well, we
ce
didn't
projet
quantify that, or the finance was
en,
not priority
en Arabes
their NDCs because they do
Unis.
have the capacity. However,
En
if
Arab pays,
from this amount, we have just
il y a
$62 billion from public international climate funds
et par
received
exemple, il y a
just in 10 years.
72
So you see that
billions
since the time we speak about the NDCs
qui
and the
sont
implementation, we just like
spendés
there's nothing that comes specifically to the
juste
region.
de
At the same
2010
time, when it
à
comes to
2020.
the flows that come to the LDCs, even less.
Et
We
comme
try to
si
see how
vous
this
voyez,
comes, because
le
if
LDC,
countries in the region need to deliver the NDCs, then as quantified in the NDCs,
et cette
then we just need
région-là,
to
ou
look
ce
at which kind of finance,
pays,
the
il faut bien
I spoke about the quantity, but the quality. If it just look into debt financing, so this is what is coming. Less of them coming as grants.
commencer.
And it's really, as presented in the slide, we see
Et
that
comme on va voir
the public sector
le
finance is not
LDC
there and
ici
not
aux
mobilized
quelques
yet.
régions
We see also that only
de
4% of
2010,
the
de
funds is
2020.
sourced from global climate funds, but also we see
Et,
excessive debt financing, as
et
you
tout
see
ça,
that
juste
1.4 trillion dollars in
4%
2020 in the Arab region, and just the figure that
qu'ils
we have.
sont
And just I want to reflect on
travaillés
the
avec
geographical disparities. I did indicate certain
la
countries in the
région.
region were able to really quantify their financial aid, like
Et
we
quand
give
on va voir
example of Jordan, Morocco, and Tunisia, and also
le
Egypt
différent
and Lebanon. So we
géographique
see in this respect certain
dispose
quantification.
comme
We
en
see also
Égypte
that
et
certain
Maroc
countries in the GCC also supported
et
and
Libanais et
engaged in
Tunisia
this green financing. But
sont
at the same time, the most
comme
vulnerable, like
c'est au
we take
Maroc,
6 Arab LDCs,
c'est plus
receive only
dangereux.
6.6%
Et c'est
of the
Maroc,
public
l'Arabie
international climate
Saoudite.
finance. And this is,
Il
I'm
faut
talking
bien
about the average, because less go into the LDCs, but less also go into other adaptation. And most of it
parce
is
que
going
le
to
moyen de
medication,
tout
since we
ça,
speak about the energy
il
sector.
va au
And
LDC
this respect, so although we
pour le
have
projet.
just less than a few years, and we are in a decade of action, and I think through all the
tout
sessions
ça,
that we had, it really needs acceleration of all the efforts, be it globally and regionally, but also at the national level. We
tous
still
ces
need to
sujets,
really
il
strengthen
faut
the
bien
policy that we
dépêcher
have in order that to
à le
mainstream the NDCs target. And the NDCs, I would say that spirits in terms of putting this target covers the different
Et on
sectors.
voit
It's
aussi
not just the energy sector, it's not just the water sector,
le
cross
différent
sectors, an
secteur.
integrated approach, while ensuring that the
C'est pas
quantification
seulement
of the need for finance
le
in order of
secteur de
technology innovation,
l'énergie.
capacity building is well
On
reflected,
voulait
but
être
well quantified,
sûr
and also the quality of the finance that come
qu'il
into
y a
the countries.
plus de
The government
secteurs
institutions cannot, the NDCs
et
not just
suffisant
limited of government institutions, need much more mobilization of the private sector and other institutions. And at the same time, we need to ensure that the capacity building of the different, not only public institutions, are involved in developing these NDCs
et
with the
maintenant on
support
va
of the UN
traduire.
system and other global organizations. It's also about looking to how really to build the capacity of different institutions at different levels in order to not only design, but also the
Où il
implementation
y a
and the
plus
mainstreaming, specifically when it comes to the climate
difficultés,
finance, which is not in line, for example, with
spécialement
the energy
quand
planning,
on
but
parlait
also
à
the long-term perspective
le
when
moyen,
it comes to the implementation of the SDGs.
comment on
And we look into
discute
really, as we speak about the NDCs, and
avec
a few
le
days
changement
left from the
dans le
COP28, I think last year was really
réchauffement climatique.
good, I would say, milestones when we focus in Egypt on the climate finance.
Et
I think really we need to
spécialement
increase
quand
more the
on
risk
parle
mitigation
avec le
instruments
CAP
when it comes to the climate finance, and we need
28,
also to have better
ici
reporting
c'est les
mechanisms,
sujets ou bien le
comes to
moyen
capacity building
de
with
mettre
the
les
support
C
of
de
all
carbone
UN agencies and partner
affectés
organizations
au
in order
global.
to support the member state to have adequate
Et
reporting
tout ça,
mechanisms to be able to report on the progress of the NDCs.
c'est le
They need to
date
be linked to the progress on the
global
SDGs,
aux
specifically
États-Unis.
SDG 7, 6, and 13, and others that link it to that, and how this impact the other SDGs related to economic, environment, and
Et
social
alors,
development at the national level, but at the same time to help the country to put in place the
et
data
aussi
reporting
on
mechanism
doit
to
bien
properly
être
report
sûr.
on the NDCs and improve the
Il y a
quality of
beaucoup de reports
submitting the
qui
NDCs, because it's an instrument and it's an opportunity given to countries of the region in order to
on
unlock
voit
finance, but also
on
to
attend
communicate on the progress they are
qu'ils sont
leading
très
in the global
importants
agenda as well.
pour
Thank you very much.
communiquer. Et merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Radia, thank you very much. Simon. So now that the scene has been set, let us continue with the next part of our event, where I will pass the moderation to
Et
Mary
maintenant,
Awad
on
Menashe,
va,
Senior Climate Action Specialist at the UNFCCC Regional
on va
Collaboration
écouter
Center
pour
for
Monsieur
MENA and South
Mademoiselle
Asia.
Maniel
And I will also invite
qu'ils ont
our
travaillé
distinguished
avec les
panelists,
États-Unis
Dr.
et Nord
Abdullah
d'Afrique.
Al-Subayed, Director General, Sustainability and Climate Change at the Ministry of Energy of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. If you can please
Et
come in.
on va aussi discuter avec Madame Abdullah
Back, Ms. Radia Sadawi, Chief of Energy in UNESCO.
et aussi
Engineer
Madame
Refai,
Down from
Head of Carbon Credits Department
de
at the Ministry of
UNESCO
Environment in Arab Republic of Egypt. Thank you very much.
et aussi
Youssef Mouazed,
monsieur qui
Director
vient
of
de
the
Égypte
Directorate of Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment in Iraq. Thank you very much and welcome.
et
Mr.
le
Mohamed
président
Sow, Deputy
du
Director of
climat
Climate and Energy Economy
au
at the
chauffement
Ministry of Environment and Sustainable
et
Development
monsieur
in
Mohamed,
Mauritania. Thank you, Mohamed.
le ministère de l'environnement au
Adel
Mauritanie.
Abbas, Regional Climate Change Coordinator of MENA of the World Bank. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Dr. Kishan Kodai, Regional
Et
Coordinator
monsieur Hicham,
and Team Lead at
qui
UNDP
vient
Program
du
of
nord de
African
l'Afrique.
States. Mary, all yours.
Thank you so much, Monica. Thank you everyone for being here.
Merci,
We have a
Monsieur
set of
Monique,
distinguished
merci.
panelists today to talk us through what the NDC look like in 2025, taking into consideration the MENA's
On
energy
a
transition.
spécialité
I wanna
des
thank also our two
personnes
speakers
ici.
presentations which can frame our discussion here today.
Et bienvenue à
I would
tout
like
le
to
monde
move
qui
from the
est
regional to the
spécialité au
national.
Moyen-Orient.
I would like to
On
turn
va
to,
discuter.
Dr. Al-Subai. Doctor, in Saudi Arabia, we would be very interested to know what is your
Et
country's
maintenant, on va
experience,
discuter avec
in the
Monsieur
renewable
Ismail.
energy transition
On
in the
voit,
context of your
on voit
NDC,
bien
and how
en
that
Arabie
looks like,
Saoudite
at the national level, and also if you
comment
can share
vous,
with us
vous,
what are
vous
lessons
allez,
learned, which could be shared
comment
with
vous
other
allez,
countries in terms of planning and in terms of what needs to be taken into consideration when planning for the energy transition.
et comment les choses qui sont bien. Et je veux remercier les personnes tout le monde qui ont discuté et expliqué les événements pour tout le monde par rapport à l'énergie. Et pour ça, ce que je veux, tout ce que vous allez dire, oui, besoin.
Having all the basket of solutions, and then based on your national circumstances, you plug in your initiatives, your projects.
Il faut qu'on a beaucoup de projets et beaucoup de plans pour renouveler les NDC principaux. Il y a aussi des projets de l'Arabie Saoudite qu'on a fait pour le plan pour les produits, le renouvel plan, 50% d'énergie et les manufactures juste 2013. Il y a aussi des choses qu'on voulait le faire au propre avec le pétrole, comme on fait le vert, le bleu et l'autre programme climatique pour avoir des solutions aux régions de l'Arabie Saoudite. Et aussi, on va voir comment le plan d'avoir vert Arabie Saoudite. Et tout ça, c'est indiqué ou le même avec le carbone
and also into the nature-based solutions. So these are the frameworks within the Saudi Green Initiatives that also
on va bien avoir des solutions pour les solutions pour bien environnement. Donc, merci pour expliquer. Donc, et exactement, c'est quoi le problème qu'on a aussi. Et maintenant, on va discuter avec M. Ayman. Nous voulons savoir c'est quoi le plan. On va commencer avec Mr. Dania. Merci, Madame Dania et Monsieur Ismail. Leur expérience en Égypte, c'est pas beaucoup différent. Même aussi, c'est quoi aussi le vert hydrogène, c'est le même plan, c'est un travail en Égypte, mais le problème c'est le moyen et le somme de l'argent. Mais quand c'est tout le report que nous allons avoir aux États-Unis, on va concentrer maintenant avec le local challengement et global challengement aussi, comme a dit le docteur. Et aussi l'autre pays qui sont entrés le règlement de Paris. Il y a beaucoup de reports. Donc, il y a beaucoup de choses. Mais il faut quelques solutions. Parce que l'économie, ce n'est pas la même, différente de chaque country, chaque pays. Donc, il y a beaucoup de différentes solutions. Depuis le corona COVID-19, il y a plus de challenges, le challengement, et comment on doit préparer et comment on doit adapter l'autre. On ne peut pas disregarder le sujet. Et alors, pour la solution de carbone, c'est une chance que remplacer le normal pétrole au normal gaz de verte énergie, et c'est très bien chance. Il y a millions de tonnes qui sont réduits. Et quand nous avons de chance et de bons moyens, ça suffit pour les changer. Et si on a les bonnes technologies, on peut faire de changements et il va être suffisant pour mes mois de carbone. Il va aider notre travail. Et pour dire l'autre plan, l'autre projet, pour le long temps, mais on peut faire de suffisants projets. Et merci pour
understand
pour
what
expliquer ce que
needs to be done, but also
vous avez
understand
à
the
voir.
importance of the enabling environment for national implementation. And
Et
thank you, Dr.
merci,
Ahmed, for
beaucoup
alluding to some of
beaucoup de
the
personnes ont bien
finance and
appris
infrastructure. And
comment on
many
fait
of us know
avec
the
le
solutions,
LDCs.
but the way to the solutions
Et
is to
merci
find that
pour
enabling
ce
environment.
que
Thank you
vous
so
avez
much.
dire
I'd like to turn to Dr.
et les solutions.
Ahmed. Thank you so much for being here with us. We'd be very interested
Et
to
merci,
know,
Dr.
in
Youssef.
Iraq, what is the situation in terms of the energy transition,
Et on
what
est
are
bien
the
content
priorities
pour
and next steps, looking forward to the next NDC.
comment, c'est quoi les solutions ou c'est quoi les situations en Irak.
Directly, we prepare this NDC document. In the NDC document, we focus about the energy sector.
Maintenant, on va construire avec le LDC
Our vision in the NDC for the reduction.
un construire en énergie pour laisser les juste 2 de 1%, mais 15% quand on parle avec l'énergie. Mais quand on a dit énergie, on parle avec le ministère de pétrole. Et comme on a fait beaucoup de sources avec eux, mais il y a différents chemins pour construire. Quand on parle avec les différentes ressources comme un pétrole, et comme on parle avec la stratégie que nous allons avoir au Irak, on a essayé de chercher des solutions. Comment on a bien approuvé la solution aux Émirats et tout ce que technologie qu'on a besoin. Mais quand on parle avec le illégalement, il y a plus de succès. Il y a plus de succès. Par rapport au renouvelable énergie, il y a beaucoup d'approuvé pour saigner le plan. Et cette région, on en parle avec comment faire avec le transfert de l'énergie. Et on a ce qu'on est. C'est quoi le succès qu'on a fait en Irak? Et on a aussi au COP 2018, et spécialement comme on a discuté au gaz de méthane, qu'on a bien besoin au 2030. L'autre pays qu'ils sont protégés au 2025. Donc, on a bien venu. Il y a beaucoup de venus. Et merci, j'ai bien compris que tout ce qui est général, comment vous allez travailler avec ce général objet et comment vous allez organiser. Et c'était bien pour l'environnement. Mais il était bien pour vous que vous allez avoir de renouvelles. Et voilà maintenant, c'est quoi le plan au Mauritanie? Ça va être alors Il va parler avec le français.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais vous partager un peu aussi la position mauritanienne, ou l'ambition mauritanienne dans le cadre de sa CDN renouvelée en 2021. Donc, pour la Mauritanie, l'ambition d'atténuation, c'est de découpler déjà la courbe de développement du pays de la courbe des émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Et cette ambition, elle vise tout simplement, elle est basée sur l'augmentation du potentiel en énergie renouvelable dans le mix énergétique du pays. Actuellement, nous sommes à 38% de mix énergétique et nous ambitionnons d'arriver à 50% en 2030. Et avec le développement de l'hydrogène vert, nous pourrions atteindre la neutralité carbone en 2050. Donc, s'agissant du potentiel en hydrogène vert du pays, je te rappelle qu'en 2013, l'ARENA, l'Agence internationale de l'énergie renouvelable, avait fait une étude et avait spécifié la Mauritanie comme étant un pays dont certaines zones sont spécifiquement dédiées à la production des énergies renouvelables. Donc, il y a à peu près un potentiel solaire et photovoltaïque qui est suggéré de 458 gigawatts pour le projet solaire photovoltaïque et 47 gigawatts pour le projet éolien, avec un facteur d'utilisation du territoire qui est de l'ordre de 1%. Donc c'est des zones qui ne sont pas des zones d'habitation, ne sont pas des zones agricoles, mais qui sont des zones à ciel ouvert avec le soleil et le vent en permanence qui peuvent développer ce potentiel-là, avec une densité de l'ordre de 50 mégawatts par mètre carré pour le solaire et 5 MW par mètre carré pour l'éolien. Donc ça, c'est un potentiel extrêmement important pour le pays. Et nous sommes, avec ce potentiel aussi, vu que les zones identifiées, c'est des zones qui sont en phase de l'océan, donc c'est toute la zone pratiquement qui est le nord-ouest du pays qui fait face à l'Atlantique, il y a aussi la possibilité de développer, grâce à cette énergie renouvelable, de l'hydrogène vert. Donc c'est avec un potentiel extrêmement important aussi. On pourra produire, la Mauritanie a signé un mémorandum avec deux producteurs mondiaux d'hydrogène vert que sont le CPW américain et l'entreprise australienne Chariot pour une capacité de 30 gigawatts dans le cadre de ce potentiel pour monter des unités de dessalement de l'eau de mer et produire de l'hydrogène vert pour le mettre comme biocarburant dans le marché international. Et il se trouve aussi qu'avec cette capacité, nous pourrons devenir parmi les premiers producteurs mondiaux d'hydrogène vert.
المواضيع الطاقة الخضراء.
Et donc, parallèlement à cette production d'hydrogène vert, il y a
بالنسبة لإنتاج للطاقة البديلة والطاقة الخضراء والاحتياج.
La fertilisation de l'agriculture locale ou bien qu'on exportera aussi sur le marché international parce que
للسوق المحلي والسوق الدولي. بالنسبة لهذه المشاريع يوجد أكثر من 100 مليون طن من المواد، وحتى نستطيع أن نصل هذه إلى 2030. ويوجد سيستم آخر مهم الذي بدأنا في عمله من قبل كم سنة، بدأنا موضوع التيفا الذي ليس لديه قيمة عالية وليس له يعني قيمة عالية.
qui permet de concevoir des bâtiments à base de ces matériaux-là. Donc c'est aussi un facteur d'atténuation. Et la Mauritanie a admis ces matériaux comme étant un facteur contributif à l'effort d'atténuation du pays. Nous avons aujourd'hui des exemples de bâtiments, notamment le centre de tir des forces spéciales au niveau de Nouakchott qui est entièrement construit à base de ces matériaux. Et le premier prototype de bâtiment bioclimatique est en cours d'achèvement au niveau de Nouakchott. Parallèlement à ça, la Mauritanie aussi fait partie de l'environnement du Sahel, Nous avons actuellement bénéficié d'un financement de la Banque africaine de développement pour la région de 400 et quelques millions de dollars pour développer uniquement le solaire photovoltaïque dans la zone du Sahel. Et là, c'est une opportunité de faire accéder à près de 250 millions de personnes à une source d'énergie propre et faire du Sahel un hub d'énergie solaire à partir duquel la Mauritanie aussi sera un pays qui profitera extrêmement important de façon importante de cette énergie-là. Donc voilà, donc avec tous ces éléments réunis, à partir de 2050, la Mauritanie pourra atteindre la neutralité carbone. C'est ça notre ambition au niveau de la CDN qui a été réactualisée en 2021. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur So. I will try to sum up your intervention in the best way I can. Mauritania's goal is to decouple greenhouse gas emission from their GDP and looking forward to the future. What I understand is there is a large renewable energy potential that can be tapped, large gigawatt numbers, but also one point that Dr. So made was there's a large green hydrogen potential in Mauritania as well, and they're really looking into this aspect to fast track the energy transition in the country. It's an opportunity as there's a large also renewable energy intensity potential, and they aim to be one of the largest producers
On voulait renouveler l'énergie pour les...
which is very encouraging to hear. There's also the aspect of resources and minerals, which
Il y a
is
aussi
being
de,
also
plus
studied
de
for their use in different sectors inside the country,
minéral
and to develop the local
qu'ils ont.
capacity to be sure to tap into
Et comment on va faire
the
pour
potentials at the national level and
renouveler
move
les
towards
énergies locales
lower emissions by 2050. So thank you so much, Mr. So.
jusqu'à le plan de 2050.
Also, again, alluding to the aspect
Et
of
merci
technology,
pour
but
vous
what are
pour
the
cette
needed
importante
capacities
information.
in local context in order to enable and
Sur
unlock
différents,
potential at the national level.
il y a
Thank you
différents
so much.
moyens.
I would now like to turn to the organizations that support the energy transition in the MENA region here with us on the
Et
panel.
maintenant, on va discuter le...
I would like to go to Mr. Abbas first from the World Bank. In your experience in
Bon,
supporting the
Monsieur
countries in
Abbas,
the MENA regions, what have you witnessed in terms of additional opportunities to
pour
fast
le
track
nord
this
de
transition,
l'Afrique
but also what are some
et
challenges and
le
barriers
Moyen-Orient,
that you have
c'est
seen,
quoi le
at the
solution ou
regional
les
level, but
façons
also
pour
if you can give national
rapider
examples that would also be useful to understand.
pour mémoire de
Thank you very much,
carbone?
Mary. First of all,
Et merci
thank
beaucoup,
you for the
Monsieur
invite,
Marley.
and thanks to UNFCC, thanks to Kingdom for hosting
Je vous
us here.
remercie au commencer
Let me start off by saying some
pour
things
le
that you already know.
bienvenu.
We all know that
Je suis
many of
content
our
d'être ici.
NDCs in this region are not as ambitious as they could be. Even when
Au
there
cet
are
event,
ambitious
c'est pas...
targets and commitments, they are
Il y a
not
beaucoup
specific, they're not always comparable.
de
There
sujets
are issues around comprehensiveness
et
of those targets.
c'est pas
Many of the
seulement pour...
NDCs, even when they have more
Mais
specific,
c'est
commitments, they're not economy-wide.
beaucoup
And I
de
look at energy transition
global
as,
information.
as not just an energy sector issue. We really have to look at the whole economy because energy powers
C'est
everything
pas
that we do.
seulement
And
le
that's why I
secteur
think
de
it's really
l'énergie,
important for
mais
governments to
plus
look
que
at, energy transition and their NDCs
important de
from that
notre
perspective.
normale vie.
What
Et
we've
voilà.
observed and what we
Et
often
Oh.
alors,
hear is that countries in MENA, of course, there's a lot of diversity.
il y a d'autres
fossil
régions
fuel
et
rich
autres
countries,
pays,
there are, countries
ils
that,
sont
have
différents.
really been
Il y a
struggling
aussi de
to
riches
fiscal side
pays
as well.
et
And
autres
because
pays
of that
qui n'ont
diversity, I think
pas
there's a lot of potential for
les mêmes
collaboration within the
solutions
region as
et
well,
bien avoir
whether
des
it's on
problèmes
resources, whether it's on
avec ce
systems, etc.
programme.
We also often
Alors,
hear
elle va sur
that
avoir some
methodologies
problème.
for measuring and collaborating around different partners could be
Il
improved.
faut bien avoir
And
différentes
once we have
solutions
all of that
et
infrastructure,
avec
we
autres
really need to then look at some of the
pays.
challenges that many of these countries face in terms
Alors,
of transitioning.
il
I
faut
personally
regarder
feel
cette
that we're
solution
looking at energy transition as a
et
stepwise
comment
and a
on va
gradual process. But if we look
déménager
at the global challenge of climate change, some of the recent reports that have come
de
out,
cette solution.
recently IEA also
Et
released
ça,
a
c'est
report on
pas la
pathways
même
to net
chose.
zero.
Il faut
There's a huge disparity between where we need to be and where we are.
et alors il y a
And I think it needs not just a
différents
transition, but more
rangs
of
de
a
freins
transformation. And transformation will take a lot
le déménager et il y a beaucoup de ce challenge, beaucoup entre différents pays. Et alors, c'est quoi ce que supporte quelqu'un local paye pour le global, mais pas seulement aux énergies, de secteur d'énergie, aussi du secteur de force, du transport. Il y a des possibilités d'être mieux. Quand on a beaucoup de nouveaux viennent d'Arabie Saoudite au Golfe pays, il faut bien de le mettre au plan et aussi de et comment on peut faire avec les différentes banques, le Global Bank, et comment on va faire avec le Local Bank. Il va être peut-être de 3 milliards de dollars cette année seulement. Et c'est beaucoup d'argent pour ce sujet. Et aussi, on a essayé de venir du secteur privé pour travailler avec nous. Il y a différents mécaniques. Il y a plus de dangereux. Et alors, il faut que travailler avec d'autres collègues et travailler ensemble pour ménager ensemble. Merci beaucoup. Merci pour expliquer le NDCs, mais il y a plus de trucs compliqués, différents niveaux. C'est différents plans. C'est très important pour détruire la force et et comment on doit bien transférer pour bon plan et comme on a bien connu, il est bien très compliqué. Mais merci pour mettre des plans. Et on voulait, M. Hicham, de partager votre expérience avec nous. Comment vous voyez comment vous voyez je pense que le indicateur
uptake so far on renewable energy and the gaps to the targets by 2030. Institutional capacities, policy.
Il y a aussi d'autres énergies, l'énergie verte. Il y a autre chemin de construire. Oui, on a aussi travaillé avec le ministère de l'énergie en Arabie Saoudite. On voulait bien travailler un autre plan objet. On a déjà travaillé avec. Il faut bien. Et tout ça, c'est bien différent que l'année avant, comme 10 ans avant.
this is one of the flagship activities under the
Et
NDCs
maintenant, c'est
under the
plus
So,
important et c'est
reducing the energy intensity growth in specific sectors. Practical thing, air conditioning, just
donc
one example.
il y a de
Shifting to more energy efficient air conditioning,
sillages
transport, buildings, etc. I think having these centers of excellence, in my
comme
mind,
par
much
exemple
of
le
this energy
AC
transition is really about the knowledge
et
economy,
aussi autres
shifting,
plans
building capacities and the knowledge
pour
within the region.
l'énergie,
The
comme
expertise to
l'utilisation de
actually,
l'énergie.
and the partnerships,
Il
as
y
you
a
said,
autres
the
plans,
South-South partnerships in particular.
comme on a dit avant.
Industry-government partnerships. So I think this is
Il
one
y a
example
aussi
of,
de travaux avec le collègue,
establishing new institutions, whether it's centers of excellence,
avec les
serve as national hubs actually, for advancing these strategies from a
avec le
domestic
centre.
perspective and regional collaboration.
Il faut avoir un
I think,
centre
also an important piece is on
pour mettre tous les plans
sustainable
ensemble.
finance, green finance solutions. So one thing we're doing to help implement NDCs across countries across the region is actually to help
Il
develop
y a
national
beaucoup de
climate funds.
le vert financièrement.
So we're working, for example, with in Sudan the last number of years. We helped
Et
establish
bien,
a
on a
national
travaillé
fund
avec le Soudan.
to crowd in finance from
On a,
the banking sector, the
avec,
private sector, into
on a
achieving
travaillé
national
avec
NDC targets, especially crowding in finance for
travaillé
solar
avec
solutions for agriculture, for
l'environnement
example, or
et
water supply, for some
le soleil blanc.
poverty reduction objectives in Sudan, just as one example. Lebanon Green Investment Facility to help implement the targets of the NDC in Lebanon.
Et c'est le plus important comment faire avec le moyen de l'argent au Soudan et aussi au Liban pour avoir et arriver à le recovery de verte. Il y a aussi son propriétaire et son problème ou quelques pays et tout ça pour qu'on apprenne des informations de notre expérience comme à l'utiliser avec notre expérience comme en Yémen, en Soudan. Et on a essayé aussi pour l'énergie et l'énergie du soleil aussi. Merci, Mr. Hisham. C'est bien à voir comment c'est la dangerosité de travailler au Moyen-Orient. Il faut en avoir plus de reports et plus rapidement. Et tout ça pour qu'on a avoir de comment vous allez faire dans notre pays. Et maintenant, comment vous pensez, est-ce que j'ai écouté? Nous savons que vous allez déjà parler avec ce sujet, mais est-ce que vous avez quelque chose d'adder? Merci beaucoup pour cet événement parce qu'on voit bien comment tout le monde approchait ce sujet et comment les différents pays et comment ils ont des façons différentes, comme par exemple en Égypte, ils ont des pays de transport de gaz, mais ils ont besoin d'autres énergies sources. Et on voit aussi au Maroc, en Mauritanie, comme on sait,
targets we see in the LDCs in terms of energy access that need
LDC
huge, I would say, effort in order to support
et
agendas
comment on peut
but also partner
aller
organizations, Global the World Bank, our
pour
sister
l'énergie
agency
source.
NDC, and the work
On
that
va
are doing
bien
in terms of
autres
unlocking finance, supporting
centres et
incentives at the
autres
national level,
agents dans le
and
monde
obviously customizing
qu'ils ont
solutions based on the national context. Just maybe rather than to see
donné
the
de
chart and
l'aide
suite the opportunities that
jusqu'à
we have, I
maintenant.
think
Et c'est
number one
différent de
is
chaque
since
pays.
we speak about the
Et
implementation
comme
of the
ça, il y
NDCs
a
to support the energy transition and
différentes
climate actions. Number one,
solutions de
this
chaque
regional
pays.
platform will also lead to the
Et
global
pour
platform,
exemple,
and this is good that in the
cet
region we will have for
event,
the second time the COP,
il
and
peut
we
aider.
are obviously trying to make our footprint in terms of leading the
Il y a
global
aussi
agenda.
le
Certainly,
commencement
as a regional
de
commission, through our Center for
2028
Climate Change, we support the
et
building
also
capacity of the negotiators, the Arab negotiators specifically,
on peut
in
aider
different aspects
plus
that also
de
link to the NDC's implementation, with providing this neutral platform that just
compliqué
bring
de
the best
EDCs
practices to them in order that
et
they learn
il
that.
est
But at the
mieux
same time, we do implement integrated
de
solutions
communiquer
because we
avec
believe in
l'autre
this
pays
region.
qu'ils
I
n'ont
give just an
pas
example of region which look at how
de
to
solution.
renewable
On
energy
voulait
with
bien
LPG that
déménager
helps to empower rural women and cooperatives and
les
municipalities in countries like
renouvellements
Lebanon, for
énergie
example,
en
where we implemented these
LBG,
solutions. And we report on this kind of
comme
business
par
model
exemple
that's
en
helped to
Lebanese.
bring all the donors, try to
Et,
really see that there's a potential in the region,
et
be
quand on n'a
directly
pas
to bring it
discuté
as a grant and
aujourd'hui
try to implement the solution that
pour,
even 0.01% make a difference for
pour
at least not just
aider
the
le
economic and social
savoir
context that
pour
we have. And at the same
tout le
time,
monde
we
et,
try also to
et
support
bien
the
avoir
finance
de
part on the debt swap.
solutions et
It's a
suffisantes
regional initiative that the Executive
dans
Secretary
l'autre
of ESCWA
pays.
is leading, trying to bring different
Et
donors
comme
and countries,
vous allez dire,
especially in Europe,
il faut
and there's
bien
an example that
discuter.
we work in Jordan this, not only from the adaptation but also the co-benefit
Et
side.
comme on
And
dit,
hopefully
l'autre
it will give a
travaux
result in unlocking finance.
imaginables,
Next month we will have the matchmaking and bringing
mais
project
dans le
pipelines that
prochain
we had
mois,
through regional
il
platform
va
climate
bien
finance with
avoir
different
la
stakeholders.
solution
They will
ou
present
bien
the project
avec
to
l'autre
financial institutions. And this is just an example
présentateur
that we do with other our sister
pour
organizations,
comment
regional
faire
commissions,
avec,
with the support of different institutions globally.
avec
But
l'autre.
just maybe this is what we tried humbly to do. But I think
Et
the
ça,
number
ce
one what is
qu'on a
important is
essayé de
really to
faire,
understand the entry point that we have in terms of vulnerability.
mais il faut bien
But at the
comprendre
same time, we on the regional level and
comment
countries,
c'est
as
fragile
represented here, they
dans
are
ce
committed to
pays,
deliver on the NDCs because it's a way for social economic
mais
sustainable
ils ont
development.
bien
It's not about energy transition. I don't like the term energy. I
communiqué
like the transformation of the
pour
energy system for more sustainable future.
faire ce
Transition may
qu'ils
be a
ont
bridge,
dit
bridge
qu'ils
may
vont
not be
faire
sustainable. This is the way I
à
define
l'année
it, but
prochaine,
we believe that energy transition
pour les
pathways
années
with us
prochaines.
are different depending on our national context. And that's
Et
why, so I
ici,
said, we spoke
on voit
about
bien
finance.
qu'il y a
This is the
différents
access of technology as highlighted
chemins
for the hydrogen part in
pour,
the region. There is a serious problem in terms of how to link
et
the
comme
value chain, how
quelques
to
points
not only the
que
upstream
mon
side,
collègue a
the
déjà
downstream
dit,
side, which is the electricity and hydrogen, but also the upstream side, on the mineral side,
ce
that
que
we
nous
have in the
voulons
region, and to
aider
build it in an integrated approach to deliver on the climate,
l'énergie
but to
pour
deliver in
différentes
really an inclusive
régions
just,
et
and
différents
to have the right to be a bigger player in this global world.
centres.
And just to highlight that work that we do with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, our house, I believe that
Et aussi,
presented by the ministry that
et
the
comme
CCE, the Circular Carbon
Monsieur
Economy Framework, and I insist on that under the 4R, it's not just a
Ismaël,
solution
c'est
for oil and
au
gas producers,
CI,
it's really a solution
c'est
that
pas
speak
seulement
on
la
how the
solution,
world need to transform its energy system.
il faut
The
bien
system will rely
discuter
and
et
continue to
parler
rely on oil and
avec
gas
c'est quoi les
resources for the decades
plus
to come.
importants
And the
points.
oil and gas is what we will today and what the setting
Et
that we
pour
have
ça,
here. So to transform to
on
this
va
energy system,
tous
you
avoir
really
du
need to go through this
savoir,
4R that
de
help us
l'information
through circularity, through
et
identify the
comment
carbon
le succès
footprint, so investing in a solution that help to
pour le
recycle
faire.
and reuse to help
Et on va
not
bien
only to
être
create jobs,
le
to develop
carbone
our
et
economies,
comment on
and
doit.
really to have a market share in this global
Il y a beaucoup
markets
plus
in,
de
across the value chain, but
chances
also
pour
that we take the responsibility
l'emploi
as all
et les
players
travaux.
globally, not just in the region, to remove the carbon and to make best of use of it, and it's well presented
Et pour
here by
changer le
and I think,
carbone et
through the
replacer.
center that were established in the Kingdom of Saudi
Et ce
Arabia,
que nous voit
the
ici
center
en Arabie
cares,
Saoudite,
advancing emissions reductions regionally.
il
That
y a
is collaborate with the
deux
Ministry of
centres
Energy to establish, hopefully
qui
by the end of this year,
ils sont
will help
ici en
to
Arabie
work on the
Saoudite
pillar
avec
of
le
access to
ministère
technology,
de
the finance,
l'Environnement
specifically
et le ministère de
technology, to
l'Énergie
really under the 4R,
pour
and how
différents
to mainstream this principle in order to
secteurs
deliver on the NDCs, to
énergiques.
deliver on the climate agenda, but more importantly, to ensure that it's just and inclusive, and that
Il faut
none of us
qu'on
is left
avoir
behind,
de
and that
NDC
really we
et comment on
communicate
va
the
mettre
huge efforts
laisse,
that the countries are doing, but also we communicate the needs that we
on
have
va
in
laisse
order
de
to,
carbone
I would
pour
say,
avoir
also to communicate
une
that the
positive
effort that we are doing is
solution.
not just regionally, nationally, but also globally, and how we are contributing to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Radia. I don't think we can
Alors on
do
fait
everything
tous
in
ça
a way, in the way that
ensemble,
you have
pas
shared it.
seulement.
We would have loved to hear from all of you
Et
much
alors
more,
là,
but unfortunately
on
our
va,
timelines are
merci
pretty
beaucoup,
advanced.
mais
Just maybe an
on va
outline to sum
terminer
up
avec Monsieur.
everything that happened with the rich interventions from
On
everyone.
va
There are different pathways to the
dire ce
transition
qu'on
to
a
information,
déjà
as you have alluded.
dire
And
cet
one
événement.
final note I want to make is I see a lot of regional cooperation and a lot of international collaboration.
Il y a
on
différentes
this. Countries are
solutions.
talking to each other more, taking
Il y a de
examples of
communiquer
implementation
avec
and successes
autres pays
across borders.
ensemble,
There is leadership in the region,
mais pour le
and
succès
support for this enabling environment as countries
dans
understand what
cette
they need more,
région,
they can formulate their needs better and accordingly set the goals that they need to set in order to
il y a
achieve not only climate action but sustainable
différents
development. So I
chemins
want to
que
thank everyone,
autres
if you would join
pays
me in
ils
thanking
ont
the panel and wishing you a
le
successful
faire.
rest of the
Et
conference.
merci pour vous, pour venir ici, et je souhaite un bon succès, et merci à vous tout le monde.